Hey everybody, I'm Jake. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for coming out today to protect your most sensitive users with this one weird trick. As I said, my name is Jake. This is not an appropriate slide for this type of talk. This is more what we're going to be talking about. So I have to apologize for several things up front. Number one, the colors. Number two, there will be some motion. There's no like flashing, but there will be a lot of motion. So if that bothers you, please, I don't know. I'm sorry. Thirdly, I am going to gloss over a lot of technical details in this because this is a presentation. This is not a white paper, Jim. Yeah, and there will be a section towards the end that is really, really code heavy. So if that's not your thing, just be aware of that. I'm going to try and fly through it as quickly as possible, but there is going to be a lot of code on screen, and I'm going to try to explain what I can, but we'll see where we go. All right, so today we will be talking about the protected users group in Active Directory. I got a groan out of the audience already. So you may be asking, why would I want to present a whole ass talk about a single group in Active Directory? Well, I'd like to maybe show you why. So, show of hands in the crowd, please. If you work with Active Directory, whether that's operations, administration, defense, or offense, like, okay, we got one, we got some, okay, keep your hands up for a second. Keep your hands up for a second. All right. If you have heard of the protected users group before that slide before, go ahead and keep your hands up. Everybody else put your hands down if you, okay. All right, now with the people with their hands up, how many of you actually use this group? Yeah, we got, Rob. Thanks to me, thank you, buddy. So this is why I want to talk about this group, right? So what we're going to talk about first, it's going to be some basic background on what the group is. Then we're going to talk about the 4 different buckets of protection this provides to your most sensitive users. And those would be enforcing really strong authentication, eliminating delegation, and then eliminating cache credentials across the network. And lastly, shortening session length for these sensitive users. Then I'm going to show some examples, some quick mermaid diagrams showing what happens before and after these protections are put in place. And then we'll discuss why so few folks have actually heard of and or used this group. And then lastly, I'm going to present a methodology that should help you all get those most sensitive users into this super important group. So first off, though, we got to do the thing. So I'm Jake Hildreth. I am a husband, a father, a recovering sysadmin. That's my daughter, Kate, my wife, Carrie. I grew up, I started working help desk in 2000, and then moved through sysadmin, network admin, et cetera, and then joined up with Trimarc about 2.5 years ago. So at Trimarc, I am a senior security consultant. I lead our Active Directory security assessment team, so I am assisting others with their assessments, making sure that the service stays up to date, writing and improving tools that help other assessors do their jobs better, communicate findings better, analyze data better, whatever that may be. And speaking of tools, so I also dabble in open source development. So if you've heard of Locksmith, that's me. If you've heard of BlueTuxedo, that's me and Jim. Yeah, open source is awesome. I think information wants to be free as much as it possibly can, so try to do that. And then, last but not least, co-host of the Trimarc Twitch Happy Hour, Fridays at 2 p.m. If you want to be a guest, please just get a hold of me. We love having people of all ranges on. We got an old school hacker there. We got Speedrusser. We got some new faces like Devin Kerr. We've got some hidden faces like Jack Reciter. And then sometimes, when I'm not there, my face still shows up. So, yeah. All right, let's get into it. I've talked about me enough. Tiny bit of background info. What is the protected users group? It's a group. It's just a freaking group that shows up in Active Directory after you promote a domain controller to server 2012 R2 and make that a primary domain controller emulator. And just so you know, that is, I asked ChatGPT, give me a very cute picture of an Active Directory group. I thought I did okay. There's gonna be a lot of ChatGPT pictures in here, so. As I mentioned, Windows Server 2012 R2 is required. There's a set of protections that are like device-based, and there's a set of protections that are domain controller-based. In order to get those device-based protections, you need to have that domain controller put in the primary domain controller emulator role. If you want full protections, your domain functional level, which is basically all of our domain controllers are here and higher, can support these protections, et cetera, needs to be 2012 R2 or higher. So that's what that is. Now the protections that I talked about, they are not configurable. It's a set of protections. You cannot work around these. They are set in stone, with the exception of the administrator, default domain administrator, Jim. And here it is. I mean, this is the group. The way that I first came across it, I was cleaning up AD after functional level improvement, and I'm like, what's this guy? Poked around a little bit. I'm like, okay, we're doing this. What does it do? First off, talking about strong authentication. What does that mean? Sure you all have heard of LM and NTLM if you're in this talk. It eliminates those. You cannot, if a user is a member of these groups, they cannot use those weaker authentication methods. They can't even use the weaker versions of Kerberos authentication. So if there's a DES encrypted Kerberos auth or RC4 encrypted Kerberos, gone. AES 128 or GTFO. Second, delegation. Delegation is impersonation. It is the process where a server, a service, a process can impersonate you when contacting something else. I don't know about you, but my AD admins should not be impersonated. Eliminates those cache creds, so Windows auth is messy. Stuff gets left all over the place. You log into a machine, there's stuff left behind. Add somebody to the protected users group, that doesn't happen anymore. And then lastly, it shortens that session length. So by default, Kerberos has a default 10-hour session that then can get auto-renewed up to 7 days in length. This, by adding a member to the protected users group, shortens that session length to 4 hours. Non-renewable, 4 hours, full stop, the end. So, I already mentioned this once, but who are those most sensitive users? Well, I work in AD, so it's gonna be your AD admins, right? And there we are talking about the default domain administrators group, the domain admins, the enterprise admins. Schema admins can go in there? Oh, Jim, thank you. Should go in there. Also, you shouldn't have any schema admins unless you absolutely need them. So, different conversation. Please come to the booth and talk. We will tell you why. Yeah, so AD admins and any groups nested within those, please don't nest groups within your AD admins. I have an article on the Trimarc Hub talking all about why that's bad. So now we get into the good stuff, the examples of what these protections actually do when they are in place. So we'll go through this again. QD Kerberos over there, we want Kerberos to be as strong as possible, and we want to get rid of NTLM and LM and all the other BS that's out there. So this is how an attacker could abuse NTLM before an AD admin is being added to the protected users group. An attacker somehow tricks an admin into connecting to a share that they own and are running something like Responder, right? If that is an IP-based share, Windows will immediately degrade down from Kerberos authentication and go to NTLM authentication. NTLM authentication is basically a chunk of data gets sent from the admin workstation to the controller PC, and then as you can see on the right side there, oh wait, I have a laser. I have a new pointer, so I don't know where the laser is, but oh no. Oh no. I'm red-green colorblind. I can't even see it, so never mind. It's fine. So on the right side, then, okay, the attacker gathers that NTLM hash, sends it off to the domain controller, and now the domain controller accepts that that was an AD admin connecting to it. It's not true, but that's where we are. Afterwards, so number one, that AD admin could not connect successfully to an IP-based share. But then because Kerberos just would fail. Remember, we are enforcing strong authentication, only Kerberos 128 or higher. So, number one, initial attack is not gonna work. Number two, the AD admin connects to that attacker-controlled PC. The attacker can gather Kerberos stuff. There are some attacks. It's not impossible to attack that. It's just a heck of a lot harder. And really, that's kind of all what security is, right? Just making things a little bit harder. And so that's what we're doing here. Yeah. This is probably the biggest impact to using the protected users group is just eliminating that weak authentication. Now, impersonation. Sean touched on it several times yesterday. Delegation is impersonation. What delegation is a user connects to a server, says, hey, can you go get data from this other server? And server one goes to server two and says, hey, can I have data on behalf of this other guy? Yeah, here you go. That's fine. Again, AD admins, super important in your environment, right? I don't want anyone impersonating those folks. So this is what it looks like in reality, maybe. Okay, we've got Dave. Dave is an AD admin, and trying again with the laser. It's not gonna work. Common flow, right? Admin connects to a web server. Web server asks the SQL server, may I have Dave's confidential data? The SQL server smartly checks with the domain controller and says, is this web server even allowed to do this? And if they are not a member of the protected users group, the domain controller responds and says, of course, this web server is allowed to delegate. I see no protections against Dave being impersonated. Here you go. And then the SQL server hands back the data that was requested. Web server hands it back to the to AD admin Dave. And Dave is happy despite just performing an incredibly risky maneuver. Afterwards, maybe. There we go. So same flow at the beginning, right? May I have the confidential data? Yes, of course you may. No, but instead, may I have Dave's confidential data? Again, SQL server checks. Is the web server allowed to impersonate Dave? This time around, wait, the web server is allowed to do impersonation, but Dave is protected against this. They are in the protected users group. And so, yeah, despite what Dave told you, man, like I can't do it for you. And then the web server responds, and I am sorry for the very long lead up for a HAL 9000 joke. All right, as we mentioned earlier, you connect to a machine, your credentials are going to be left behind unless you are a protected user. There's other protections that could be in place, credential guard helps, et cetera, et cetera. But in general, we don't want our AD admins connecting to anything other than a domain controller or a privileged access workstation. It's too much of a risk to connect to these other devices. So, thankfully, the protected users group exists because people are still going to do that. We were in a call with Microsoft a year ago, somewhere around there. And I brought up the protected users group because I am a one-trick pony. And, how do we get this out there? How do we get more people using it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And they're like, we don't know. We don't understand. I'm like, you're Microsoft. You've got marketing dollars. We could make this happen. And they said, it really is kind of like the best thing that you can do unless you are doing every other thing exactly perfectly. The protected users group will really help you, right? Tell me out there, how many of you know that you are doing everything exactly perfectly in your Active Directory environment? And if you say that, please come to me afterwards and we will have a chat. Yes. So this one is pretty straightforward. AD admin connects to a user workstation. They log off. Some of those credentials are left behind. Some very elite hacking, aka phishing, takes place. And now that attacker can gather those credentials for use in other places. Simple, straightforward, etc. Afterwards, all right, AD admin connects again. After they log off, because they are members of the protected users group, those cache credentials no longer exist on the machine. Elite hacking takes place again, but there is no credentials to steal at this point. So, can't easily laterally move, but guess what? They're going to attack something else anyway, because ultimately, no matter how secure your AD admin castle is, like really, it's not a CTF. People aren't trying to get domain admin for domain admin to be cool. They want to get that data. They want to sell that data. They want to extort you. They want to encrypt you, etc. So please, protected users is great. It's going to add some protections, right? But you're not done. And lastly, shortening session length. I mean, I don't know why I created a diagram for this because it's pretty straightforward, but 7 days is a long time for an attacker to be playing in your environment. 4 hours, less time, still a lot of time. Don't get me wrong. What's the shortest compromise we've seen? 20 minutes, something like that, from compromise to full ransomware. Yeah. So, yeah, 4 hours is good, is better, but not the be-all, end-all. So that being said, if you have been proactive and you have taken steps to actually shorten that ticket time length even further past 4 hours, that will take effect. Your users will hate you for that, and that is why I hated the protected user group when I first put it in place. And so, yeah, 4 hours. We get it. It's fine. Gary, yes?
Do you get any warning that you're about to be logged off of your session?
You get prompted again. It actually, like, you try to connect to a new resource, and it pops you up. Anytime you try to connect to a new resource, it'll pop up a login at that point. Does that make sense?
Okay, so in other words, you can keep working.
You'd have
all of a sudden, you're going to have to log in, but you didn't lose all your work.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's not a, boom, you're gone. It's a, okay, we need to make sure you are who you are. You will still maintain local computer access, which if they've gotten onto your paw, you've got different issues anyway. So, yeah, so of all of those, like, you know, how much is it going to cost? It's free. This is built into Windows. It's been here, checking my watch here, 10 years. 10 years, okay? 10 years, and I will not lie. I've seen about 200, 250 environments since starting to work at Trimarc. Of those, less than 5% have fully implemented the protected users group. And I'm talking super mature environments to really immature environments. Nobody uses this frickin' thing. So we ask, why don't you use this, right? Well, it does have some limitations that can get in the way of some existing administration behaviors. But if I was going to put it another way, what it's preventing are those riskiest behaviors that you need to eliminate anyway. So anytime I hear somebody say, well, it broke this workflow, I'm like, you probably shouldn't have been doing that workflow to begin with, guys. So, common things that we run up to. Number one, I'm sorry for the dumb pun, but A, I'm a dad, as previously explained. Number two, when I was demoing these slides for Brandon on the Trimarc team, and this came up, and he lost it. He's like, dude, dude, legacy, I get it. I was like, oh, I wasn't intended, but okay, cool. So you all have to suffer too. All right, so legacy applications. What am I talking about like with this? It's not exactly legacy, but yes, legacy. Old stuff is probably going to have hard-coded weak authentication involved. But some not so old stuff also has that. vSphere. You heard of it? Yeah. They don't support members being in protected users group. I'm curious if this is an intentional thing or if it's just hard, because really I don't want my AD admins to be administering my VMware infrastructure anyway. Have you heard of an identity nexus? A guy I work for talked about it yesterday, how it's all tied together, right? You compromise VMware, you compromise AD, you compromise AD, you compromise VMware, and then you pivot to Entra, and then AWS, according to Muteki over here, and like, whew, we're just bouncing all over the place, right? So, Veeam's backup was one that got brought up to us commonly. We could not use Veeam if we had members in the protected users group. They thankfully, as of I believe May of last year, now support full Kerberos authentication and membership in the protected users group. This weird one at the end here that I've mentioned is Entra ID seamless single sign-on. You can't roll the account password for that. You have to be a member of global admin and domain admins and not a member of protected users group in order to rotate this password. And they want it rotated every 30 days. No. So those are some. Rob out here told me maybe Ivanti or Tivoli or, right, yeah. As another one that, yeah, formerly Shavlik is another one that, is it hard-coded NTLM or is it, not sure? Okay, cool. But yeah, so there are some things out there that just don't support it. But again, I don't want my AD admins, the most crucial accounts in this entire environment, to be doing those things anyway. They should be doing AD administration exclusively. Come on, let's do this, girl. There we are. All right, I talked about this earlier, but Kerberos and IP addresses can be done, but it requires additional configuration, and it's a little brittle and whatnot. So when a user connects to something via IP address and needs to authenticate with Active Directory, it's going to default down to NTLM. And as we've described, NTLM it's insecure. How insecure? Let's talk about that. Earlier this week, Erica Zellick posted on Twitter, not Twister. Oh man, that'd be a cool one. About how she was able to capture the NTLM hash of a domain controller, and for $130 and 20 hours of time, was able to completely crack that NTLM hash. That means get the full plain text password for a domain controller, which is like 256 characters. Is that? I'm always looking over here. These guys know stuff. I just repeat it. Chat GPT right here in my brain. But yeah, so that's kind of why we're pushing these two. Like it's not NTLM v1 is insecure. It should be considered nearly critical and should be gotten rid of. Remote desktop issues, always another common issue that pops up. And what we're talking about here, network level authentication is required once you become a member of the protected users group. And a lot of people disabled that back in the day because it caused weirdness. Fix your weirdness. Let's get you more secure, right? Also, very old devices don't even support it to begin with. So let's work to get those very old devices off of your network as well. I understand OT and ICS networks are a different world. We'll talk. All right. Why, additionally, non-Windows devices? I am a Mac user. I love my Mac. At my old job, my Mac was my daily driver, and then I would connect to other Windows devices. I added protected users group, my admin account, and suddenly could not do that. And I was very sad. I understand it. I don't like it. I understand it. Microsoft on a Microsoft device controls end-to-end the entire process, right? So it's one of the times that I like a walled garden is here. And the Apple App Store, as much as they do wrong, but I do like it. Sorry. Required delegation. It's going to break required delegation. Why are your AD admins being delegated to begin with? Again, we keep going back to this. It's a risky behavior. Stop it. AD admins only administer AD, and they only log into PAWS and domain controllers. The end. Yeah, they should not be SharePoint admins and whatever's going on. And then there are some limitations, and you're going to hear me repeat something else again. Number one, our RID 500 account is what we call it, but basically the default domain administrator account when you stand up a domain, it does not get the full set of protections from the protected users group. So there are some other protections you can assign, and we'll talk about those in a second. Additionally, because of the way computer accounts and service accounts just work, Microsoft is strictly against adding service accounts and computer accounts into the protected users group. So we have seen an occasional service account make it in. I'm like, how's that work? They're like, eh. I'm like, do you actually need that service account in AD admins? And they're like, well, probably not. And there's where we are. Service accounts and computers should not be AD admins to begin with. Again, it's protected users group, not protected computers, not protected service accounts. We want users in there only. So now we get into a little bit of the, hey, I am right on time, just like I thought I would be. Sweet. This is the code section. We're gonna talk about code. I am trying to give a high-level overview of what the code is doing in most locations, but this is gonna be a lot of code. Across the bottom of every slide, there will be a link to my GitHub where each of these snippets is an individual PS1 script, and so you can run this for yourself. All right, PS1. All right, who's a PowerShell fan bigger than me? Oh, think? Oh man, all right, all right. Have you gotten a tattoo of it yet? I haven't either, but it's just curious, just curious. So yeah, PowerShell 5, we're talking about, so you can open your ISE if you're old school, or your VS Code if you're cool. Load the Active Directory PowerShell module, and then in a single domain forest, you can be a domain admin. In a multi-domain forest, you want to be an enterprise admin, because we're going to be logging into each of your domain controllers to do stuff, okay? And I would really like it if nobody else could log into your domain controllers. And if other people can, again, booth is right over there. All right, first thing we're gonna do. I talked about the forest functional level, right? Forest functional level means basically all of your domains in your forest are at this level or higher. They can support the schema for this specific forest, etc. We want you to be, you have to be, to get full protection in all of your domains. You want to be Server 2012 R2 or Server 2016. This environment that I'm testing in, 2016 Forest, because it was stood up, I think June of last year. It sounds about right. Jim, when did you buy all your VMware gear? And if your forest functional level is there, we can skip ahead like 5 slides. All the other stuff is like trying to get things set up to at least get you the bare minimum of what you need to get some of these protections in place. So if your forest functional level is not there, you can at least get your domains up. They can be moved up separately, right? Again, we want to see 2012 R2 or higher in order to get domain controller level protections. If your domain functional level is not 2012 R2 or higher, you can still get device level only protections. You need at least one Server 2012 R2 domain controller, and you need to, as I mentioned way long ago, promote that to a primary domain controller emulator role. Once you do that, that protected users group becomes available to lower level domain controllers. Let me take it. Okay, hold on. If you are still running older than 2012 R2, no, don't even come see me at the booth. Just fix it. Just get it done. It's a domain controller. It's cattle. It's not sheep. You can stand up a new one and take the old ones down. It's fine. Yeah. Just finished up an assessment a couple months ago that were 2008 R2 servers everywhere, and yes, very much so. If you're at 2012 R2, reminder though that support for that expired last year. So you are now running unsupported 2. Replace your domain controllers, please. Okay, so for whatever reason you don't have a domain controller at 2012 R2, but you used to, and it used to be the PDCE, there's a really small chance that you might have one that hanging out. If you get to this point though, really, you're probably doing things wrong, and you just need to take a couple steps back. All right. So one of the requirements that I've harped on a couple times here is Kerberos AES 128 or higher encryption, right? That was instituted in Server 2008. When you raised your domain functional level to 2008 or higher, the KERB-TGT account, which is the service account that signs every single Kerberos ticket that's going in your environment, that password gets changed to support AES. If you do not change admin passwords after that, they cannot support, they do not have an AES encryption, or their password cannot support AES encryption. So if you've got admins that are older than the KERB-TGT password, they should be changed. If they're older than a year, they should be changed. If curbTGT has a password older than 6 months, it probably should be changed. There's a thing here, change your passwords. Like, I understand NIST 853 says we can get rid of that. Not for AD admins ever, please. All right, so yeah, quick talk about the what we're doing here. Setting up the, getting what your domains are in your environment, setting up the variables for it. Then we are going to grab the important SIDs, security identifiers in the network. So we're going to grab your curbTGT account, because we're going to use that for comparison. We're grabbing all those AD admin groups. So again, schema admins, enterprise admins, domain admins, and default domain administrators groups. Then we're going to enumerate those recursively, because we regularly find groups that are nested within these groups, even though you shouldn't, et cetera, et cetera. We recursively grab all those and collect a list of distinguished names of all of your AD admins. Then we're going to go ahead and enhance that data a little bit. We're going to add the domain that user resides in. We're going to add a SAM account name, because reading distinguished names can be hard. And we are going to grab the password last set. And then ultimately, that very last line across the bottom says, show me the domain, show me the SAM account name, and show me the password last set. Okay? This is what you get. Boom. Sorted list by domain of when the password was set, and then you can see clearly in BlueTuxedo.danglingspns.lol, Jim, the curbTGT password is the oldest password in that domain. That means all the accounts afterwards are able to be added to the protected users group, except for the service account and the computer that I put in there. Huh. But however, we look at Bowtie, a child domain, and the administrator account here is actually older than the curbTGT password. So in this instance, we're going to go ahead and update those passwords. And again, if your AD admin password is older than a year, change it. I don't care. Just change it. Just change it. All right, now that we have that in place, we now need to enable the logs to actually check to see if these weaker authentication methods are being used. Logon auditing should be enabled, and if you don't have it enabled, we are right up there. What you can do, though, it is pretty simple. You can log into your domain controller and basically run this command at the top. Set the login to success and failure, and you're done. You do need to do this on every domain controller. Would a GPO be easier? Yes, it would be. Let's talk a little bit later in this talk here. And then, this is not strictly required for getting users in, but once the protected users group shows up in your environment, there are a bunch of protected users associated logs. You can go ahead and enable those, so that way when you start to add users, if you're getting failures, you can identify what the failure is. So we enable those logs for going forward. How am I doing on time here? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, now's where we get down to the nitty-gritty, okay? We've enabled the logs. We're going to start looking to see where these weaker forms of authentication are being used. So over here on the right, we've got an XPath filter. Whoever created XPath is a sadist. This is true. It is possibly the hardest querying language I've worked with so far. Yeah, a lot of angry mornings going on here. Then we use that filter, and we basically check the security log for NTLM-based logons, okay? And this is what you get. We can see my domain admin account logged in insecurely, JHDA, pops up in red, right? I think that's red. Again, red-green colorblind. I use the ISE color theme in VS Code to make Jim and Sean feel comfortable. So, yeah. So back to that. If you see any of this, you are not ready. You need to go actually dig into the event logs, find the computer, the service account, whatever that is causing NTLM. It may be a specific application, it may be weird behaviors that your admins are doing, et cetera, et cetera. Track that down. This will probably be the hardest part of all of it, honestly, is tracking down NTLM usage. I mean, we go into detail in our reports about how to do it. It's not easy. It's the most time-consuming part. I promise you the juice is worth the squeeze. Then we start auditing Kerberos encryption types, okay? Like I said, about 1,000 times now, nothing below AES 128. So what you see over there on the right is a filter that says if it is not 12, which means AES 256 only, or 11, which is AES 128 or 256, throw up an alert. Oh yeah, XPath is still sadistic, cool. And then we, again, look through the event log and find any identified problems, right? And there we are, JHDA, yet again, logging in insecurely because domain admin, I do what I want. And lastly, the last thing we need to be auditing is where Kerberos delegation is being used. I remembered that I didn't include this slide last night, so I created it, and I don't remember the event IDs, and I was very tired. So that's what you get. Also, side note, every other cute thing that I've had in here, I asked ChatGPT, please give me a graphic of a very cute blah, 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 whatever it may be. This one, I said, please give me a very cute auditor. And it legit gave me like just a human lady, like normal real life lady. I'm like, do you? Yeah, whatever, it's fine. All right, so we have audited everything, right? We are happy. We know that there's no insecure logging going or insecure logons going on. There's no NTLM usage. There's no delegation, etc. Let's baby step into protected users group. And the way that you can do that is, oh, I have the wrong subtitle there. The way that you can do that, there's a setting called account is sensitive and cannot be delegated. You can check that on any account that is sensitive and should not be delegated. And that is a sensitive plant up there, by the way. JVan down here was the only one to recognize what that was. So super happy about that. Yeah, you can check this box, and then it's pretty easy to check or uncheck a box as you are testing. So do this first. Once you can get all your AD admins done there, it is then time to finally test with one, repeat after me, one, not two, not three, one user, please. Preferably somebody that can tolerate a little bit of weirdness. You all know who your admins are that can handle that. Add them. Let them run for a month. See what hurdles they press up against. And when that happens, let me know, because I'm still collecting data about this. I really want to kind of release a list almost of these are the things, these are the softwares, these are the services that are going to break when you try this. So yeah, please let me know. And then test. And then when you're done with that, test some more, please. Again, like I mentioned a while ago, this is not configurable. You cannot work around these. What you can do is if you need, for whatever reason, to break this flow or, to get around, you can then remove the user from protected users. Rob informed me, and I'm adding this into something soon, is that he kind of looks at it as a just-in-time administration, but in reverse. You temporarily remove, you add back after you're done. Yeah. And as I mentioned, because the RID 500, the default domain administrator account, does not get full protections and you should be only using it as a break glass account anyway, you can probably leave that out of the protected users group. Still mark it as sensitive. Still check that box. That box is super important. Daryl on our team did a whole talk at Wild West Hackin' Fest a couple years ago. I think it, or was it Tech? One of those. One box means a lot, right? And that box is important, so. That all sounds hard, so I'm here to make your life easier. Later this year, PowerPug. What we're gonna do. Whoa, too far. Coming to fall 2004. First, we're gonna make sure that those domain functional levels and forest functional levels are all up to date and your DCOSs are good. You're gonna check to make sure that the logs that you need to do this process are enabled. And then start auditing for you. Run this on a regular basis. Check if you're getting insecure stuff that would break as soon as the protected users group is enabled. Once that is taken care of, then kind of slow roll the process of adding those users into the group. And as mentioned, yeah, fall 2004 or 2024, not 2004, that'd be weird. I plan to have this released at either Blue Team Con, Wild West Hackin' Fest, Hackers Teaching Hackers, one of those. And if I don't get accepted for any of those, I'm just gonna release it anyway this fall. So please come to my GitHub and you can grab it. It'll be on the Trimarc GitHub, etc. But yeah, I really want people to be using this, and I think if we can just smooth the process out, right? And just get rid of those little fears, it'll really help out. So, hey, I'm good with this. Thank you all, seriously, thank you all for coming out. Like, it really means a lot to me that like other people care about this stuff a little bit, and so hopefully I've shared some good information with you. I do want to do, I want to thank BSidesCharm for having me out for a third year in a row. You all are always fantastic. I always feel welcome, etc. It's always well run. So yeah, thank you so much. And thanks to the Trimarc crew. We got Sean Metcalf, who picked me out of a crowd and allowed me to do cool stuff. Daryl Baker, which I'm not sure where Daryl is. Maybe. Oh, is at the booth? You could talk to Daryl too. You know, Purple Teamer extraordinaire and hype man for days, man. Jim Sikora, multi-dimensional brain over here that, unlike anybody else, if I have a question, Jim, some people say I'm a subject matter expert. Jim is the subject matter expert. That's who I go to, so yeah. And then Rochelle, since you've taken over running conferences, they actually run super smoothly, and I love it, and you're awesome. So thank you again. I have all of my contact info at the bottom. I'm most active on LinkedIn, surprisingly. I made fun of LinkedIn the last 2 years, but yeah, it seems to be a decent platform for me. Mastodon if you want some absurdist humor and stuff. But GitHub, that's where I'm doing stuff. Locksmith is still being regularly updated. BlueTuxedo's kind of fallen by the wayside. I'm sorry, Jim. And then the Trimarc Hub, as I mentioned, we've got blogs, we've got presentations, we've got, I don't think we have any, all of our tools have moved to the GitHub, but we have a link there, so. And if you don't want to copy all those down, you can scan the QR code. I promise it's my link tree, I promise you. I would be really bad if I just gave you a QR code and then you know exactly who it's from, so. Yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, I am right up on my time right now. So if you have any questions, come to the booth. We've got a lot of AD experts there. And yeah, I would love to chat. Love to talk, get to know all of you more, honestly. So thanks so much.